it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with this week's episode of the Rogue Roundup, where I give my picks for Standard, Modern, Legacy, Commander, and Pauper for cards that I think are going to go up. Once again, this week we are going to start off with Pauper, and for Pauper I've chosen Chromatic Sphere. Now technically I've chosen this as a double dipper because it sees play in both Pauper and in Modern. I'm not very bullish on the Pauper format, however there is movement in the Pauper scene. We're starting to see cards like Gush start to increase back in value, which is a good sign for the format as a whole. So Chromatic Sphere does see play in Pauper in the form of what we call Marauder Tron. It is a green list that runs Fangrain Marauder, and Chromatic Sphere and its twin Chromatic Star go in that deck, and you gain life off of them being cantripped or sacked. And this also sees play in Modern Tron for the ability to sift through your deck to find the right cards. So Chromatic Sphere is a tenth of the price of the Chromatic Star. This is mainly due to supply, and Star is a little more flexible in different decks with the ability to not have to sacrifice it to draw the card. But Chromatic Sphere is mainly a lot less expensive due to the rarity being twice as a common rather than being a common then and an uncommon in the core sets. So I like Chromatic Sphere long term. I think that Chromatic Star being a $6 card is a sign to come for Chromatic Sphere. We're even starting to see movement in other uncommons and commons from Tron like Ancient Stirrings and even Sylvan Scrying. So I think Chromatic Sphere is just lagging behind. The spread is reasonable. The best buy list is 25 cents. The best retailer is about 50 cents to 75 cents. I try to target these around the 50-cent mark and wait for a double up for this card and wait for the buy list to adjust accordingly. Let's move on to Standard. So Standard, I'm still looking toward the future, but this particular card is actually seeing a ton of play right now in Standard, and most of the decks that it sees play in are not rotating. There are very few cards that are rotating in some of these decks. This card is Thought Erasure. Currently, Thought Erasure can be picked up from various vendors for about $1. Now, this is an F&M promo, so there's a lot of supply of Thought Erasure. This is also from the first set of rotation, meaning Guilds of Ravnica, meaning this usually the first set has the highest supply out of all the sets in a Standard season. However, Thought Erasure is the third most played card in Standard right now. We saw when Lava Coil was the #1 card played in Standard how high the ceiling was for Lava Coil. It got all the way up to about $2.50. Now Lava Coil, of course, being reprinted in the Challenger decks have crushed the price of Lava Coil. However, Thought Erasure with its low printings I think is destined to go to that $1.50 to $2 mark. Currently it's flat. I expect growth to adjust due to just how many copies is seeing play right now in the Dimir Tempo or Esper Control or Sultai lists that are running Thought Erasure. Most of the decks that do run Thought Erasure are running 4-ofs, and there are plenty of decks that have Thought Erasure in the sideboard as well. So it's this format's version of the Thoughtseize, and is very flexible with the good mana base we have right now, and I don't see this card going down in demand after rotation. In fact, the opposite could happen just because of how well these decks are performing. They're running very few cards that are rotating currently. So again, I like this as a buy list spec. I'm hoping that the getting in at 25 cents can lead to buy listing these cards to about $1 when this card ends up being $1.50 or $2, and those vendors are offering very aggressive buy list spreads for this card. This is also quite an easy card if you take to your local scene to find people that are going to need them when the supply starts to run dry on this card. Next up, we have Modern. For this week, I have chosen another piece out of Humans. This is Kitesail Freebooter. Kitesail Freebooter is out of the Ixalan, and Ixalan is starting to dwindle in supply. Booster boxes are becoming more and more expensive. You can't really get them at that wholesale price anymore. They're shifting up slightly. It's around the wholesale price, but it isn't one of those boxes I would consider like in the in-print supply at the usually around $82, $83 is what most people can get booster boxes for. This one's starting to stretch up. So the supply of the Ixalan is starting to run out, and I think that uncommons that are seeing play heavily in Modern are destined to go up. This card can actually be had for about $1. at various vendors, and the buy list, there isn't really a good buy list that's actually buying them. However, it sees a lot of play. Modern Humans is usually a 4 of, or Abs and Company in Modern. I've seen it in Death and Taxes list that utilize or usually it's Eldrazi and Taxes that utilize Kite Sail Freebooter. So it's a widely played card in Modern. I believe it made the top 15 cards or creatures played in Modern, which is a good sign for the card going forward. So I like picking these up at a quarter, sitting on them for a couple years and waiting for this card to be the $1 or $2 card that is very, very normal for uncommons. Next up, we have Legacy. Now, Legacy, this one is a triple dipper. This usually sees play of maybe a 1 of or 2 of in Legacy, and that's pretty true for Modern. But then it sees a ton of play in Commander, so it's the triple dipper that you always want to target. And Commander, I think, is actually seeing the most supply, but since it is played in Legacy, we're going to pick it for Legacy. Supreme Verdict. It goes in Miracles and Azorius Control. Now, what I like most about this card is there basically is no spread. There is a buy list for $4, and there is a retail price for $4. So if you can get in on the $4, you can actually get out immediately. So something has to give. Either the buy list is going to go down, and that means that this will no longer be an opportunity, or what is more common will be that the retail price of this will actually go up. So I like getting in while you still have the chance at $4. Supreme Verdict dodged the reprint in the Guilds of Ravnica, or I guess the Ravnica Allegiance guild kits, so that's a good sign for Supreme Verdict. It is quite easy to throw it in a Commander deck. They haven't done allied colors for Commander, but I think even if this card does get printed in August in the Commander 2019, I don't think that it will be in multiple decks, and I don't think there will be a reasonable amount of supply that will crush the price long term. Most rares that see high demand in various sets when they're printed in a Commander set is not enough to affect them long term. Look at cards like Zendikar Resurgence. Those are cards that rebound quite quickly, and I expect the same even if this does get a reprint. So I like getting in at the $4. The growth is steady. I expect this to spike soon due to the non-existent spread. And for that reason, it's a A rating, and I think you should get in on this spec. Last up, that leaves us with Commander again, the tried, tested, and true format, and I think the best place to park money and the best place to spec cards. This week, I'm going to pick one that has very low supply, sees a reasonable amount of play in Commander, and goes in Atraxa decks. This is Venser the Sojourner. Venser is highly played in Atraxa, Brago, Rune, and Narset. It's one of the better planeswalkers as far as one that can snowball out of control, and a Commander is usually a multiplayer format where those particular payoff, like high payoff, high risk, high reward cards tend to go in more decks than a lot of times more the ultra competitive planeswalkers like you'd see with Jace the Mind Sculptor, or that particular power level that's good in 1 versus 1. So Venser being able to emblem off and then be able to exile permanents whenever you cast a spell is pretty much a win condition in Commander, and then being able to flicker decks is of course, or flicker cards is of course going to go in the various flicker strategies, Trax and Brago especially. So this card currently I picked because of the low supply. There were very few copies under a page of 4 or more on TCG Player, and a lot of them were at this little sweet spot of when they got bought out, the next one was like $4 or $5 more. So I like getting in at Venser at around the $12.50 mark. The current price is around that $14. The buy list spread is pretty reasonable, with Card Kingdom paying $10. So with that sort of spread, this card is most likely to go up on the market price. And again, this is one of those things with research that you'd have to see the low amount of copies before you pull the trigger. I also think that Atraxa is going to have resurgence in popularity with the amount of planeswalkers that came out in War of the Spark. And I think, again, Venser deserves the spot in this deck. If you have to cut cards, I don't think Venser is going to get the cut. The more people that actually build Atraxa are going to want to pick Venser up. Brago's a very popular commander. Rune's a very popular commander. Narset's a very popular commander. So I like this card for those reasons, and I expect this card to be spiking soon. I hope you enjoyed this list of cards from this week's episode of the Rogue Roundup. Be sure to check back next week, or if you're a fan of this type of financial content, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. What are your 5 cards you're going to be investing in? Be sure to check out my other channel over at roguedeckbuilder.com for our weekly Market Monday episode. Thanks for watching.